The American dream is one of opportunity that allows for aspirations to be achieved through hard work and commitment. Today, we are taking a look at how that American dream was fulfilled by humble Greek immigrants in Birmingham, Alabama. Meet you at the table.
I'm Lainey.
And I'm Laura Beth.
And we are
Steel Magnolias.
The strength of steel with the grace of a magnolia.
We are here to have uplifting conversations about life in the South.
And we've got plenty of room at our table, so pull up a chair.
Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of the Steel Magnolias podcast. We are so excited to spend some time with you, and we want to increase the table, right?
Yes.
Metaphorically speaking. So if you are enjoying this podcast, would you tell a friend, text them right now, send them a message through Instagram, Facebook, email them.
Send them a link.
Yeah, just let them know, hey, I love this podcast. I listen every week. I think you'd like it too. Easy as that.
That's how I usually find podcasts.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't have a ton of podcasts I listen to regularly, but the ones I love the most were mentioned and recommended by a friend that knows me.
Yep.
So, all right. We have uncovered something new to us.
Yeah.
Sometimes we like to think of ourselves as lifelong learners, right?
That's right.
And so we learned a little bit about the Greek influence in Birmingham on our recent trip there. So this was something that was brought up even as far back as season 3, when we had some songwriters on and
that was fun.
some guys that were from Birmingham. They are regularly down here and just mentioned there's a lot of Greek restaurants and Greek influence, and the immigrations there had, a footprint that they've left.
Yeah.
So maybe dig into that. So we did.
And here we are. So, yeah, I always find immigration stories interesting on how groups land in certain places.
Right.
And so, yeah, with Birmingham being a super fast growing city early on,
Right.
after the Civil War,
Yep.
there was a lot of immigrants that came. And so I want to just read something here from a book that is particularly about one restaurant we'll mention later.
Okay.
But so the early influx of labor into the Birmingham area consisted primarily of former plantation workers looking for work. But the character of the faces and the names on the work rolls were rapidly changing. Immigrants from Europe saw the promise of a better life in the New World, and they began leaving their homelands for the economic opportunities that abounded in America. So after a war with Turkey had ended, I'm kind of paraphrasing here now, and the defeat of the Greek forces in 1897, there was a large number of Greek men who needed new opportunities.
Correct.
And so that kind of led to a huge influx of Greek immigrants into Ellis Island.
Correct. Yep.
And then since Birmingham, just with that timing, Birmingham being a very up and coming place to do work, particularly if you were willing to work in the steel mills and coal mines.
Yes.
That was a place where a lot of them came. And apparently they quickly found that they were actually better not working particularly in the steel mines, but serving food to those who were the workers.
Exactly. Yes. Get back into your gift stream, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got this in your back pocket, you came from a place where I don't even think some of these restaurateurs were cooks or chefs themselves
per se, but they knew what good hospitality was, and they knew the need. Somebody needs a cold drink and a hot meal.
Exactly.
After a hard day's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So enter these smart Greek restaurateurs.
Yes. And so there are families that are still today running restaurants with a Greek influence here in the city of Birmingham. And we actually have a link to an article that
That's
we're going to
excellent.
share with you, that if this topic interests you. It was from Birmingham Magazine, but it's a dive into Birmingham's Greek restaurant family tree.
And it's quite lengthy, but if you want to know more about the particular families, the particular areas of Greece they came from,
Yeah.
how they intermarried, all
Yes.
of that,
Yeah.
you'll love this article.
Yeah. So should we talk about a couple of the places that we got to go?
That we actually went. Let's do.
All right. So as soon as we rolled into town, I mean, I'm not even kidding. We didn't even have a restroom break from Franklin to where we went, which was Nikki's West.
Yes.
So it's just before we got really into Birmingham proper. And it is huge.
I couldn't believe how huge it was.
Cafeteria style. Very much a local hang in terms of, I felt like if you didn't know where to go to get your silverware, or that you didn't know that the bread was included, like you should just know these things, because
Right.
the people that come there
often.
are so frequent.
Yeah.
So-
And we did a whole episode on meat and threes.
Yes, we did.
And some of the things I want to say about Nikki's West, I said in that episode. But
Okay.
I love a meat and three type place
Yes.
where you see, steel workers and senators together eating next to each other.
Exactly.
Like, that's
Yes.
just fun to me.
So much intermingling of
Yes.
classes and
And you saw that
diversity
there,
and-
I felt like.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Meet in 3, meet in 2,
Yeah.
meet in 1, maybe, I don't know. But what were the things that caught your eye? We saw lots of good things.
One thing that was interesting to me, because this was our first stop, but I now know from even reading more about this topic, is a lot of these Greek restaurateurs didn't just open a Greek restaurant. They met the need of what the people wanted, which
Exactly.
was hot meals, meat
Yep.
and threes,
Yep.
with a little Greek influence.
Yes.
So, example, at Nikki's, you had fried chicken, you had pork chops, but you also had Greek salmon.
Yes.
Which is what we tried.
Yeah. I was like, Greek style salmon. Wonder what that is.
Oh my goodness.
It's got to be good.
So good. And I feel like they had one other Greek style fish.
Did they have a
tilapia
catfish?
or something?
It was tilapia.
They did have catfish, but it was just fried catfish.
Yes.
So
Yes.
to me, it was like they had a couple of Greek
Yeah.
influenced items on the menu, but it wasn't like a full-blown Greek restaurant.
Right. Yeah. So we made our way through the line. They seat you, which is kind of funny.
It is, because you would think
It's like they're-
cafeteria style, you just go to an open table, but they
it's like they're dressing it up a little bit. And they
Yes.
do have a server that, gets your
tends
drink.
you
And,
and make sure you got what you need.
We tried some cabbage that was delicious. We tried cornbread that was delicious.
Fried green tomatoes.
That was so good. Yeah. Everything looked really good.
Yeah.
And I would say they probably have some real staple items, but I would say there's also some seasonality of what they're putting on the board. But yeah.
And there was a lot of choices. Like,
Yeah.
I was shocked at how many choices, because the place is huge.
Right.
But yet everything looked really good.
Yeah. Yep. So Nikki's West has been serving Birmingham since 1957. All right. So then we went over to another Greek run restaurant that's been around for even longer.
older.
Since 1907, the Bright Star restaurant in Bessemer, Alabama, has been serving guests there. And we got to sit down actually and talk to some of the key staff there. So we're going to be sharing a little bit of that later. But
That was such a fun experience.
what a cool spot. And it really does feel like different restaurants as you walk through it. There's the main part that's the original.
Yeah.
The 1907 restaurant. I think they even still call it. That's the 1907.
Well, yes. Yes.
And then the other sort of, they're not even, I'm not going to say side rooms because that does it just.
it's quite large too.
330, is that what she said?
Yes. They
This
can seat 330.
massive restaurant.
And in addition to the dining rooms, they have those fun private rooms.
Oh, yeah.
The Nick Saban room, the Bear Bryant room.
Yeah.
And you can reserve a room like that if you want to. But it's like old school restaurants that used to have the little small
Yes.
side rooms,
Yeah.
private rooms.
Like where you would feel like the
family
boys
dinner.
club would be. Or,
Yes.
it was very, very cool.
Yeah.
Very old school.
So the Bright Star has stayed in the family, in this particular Greek family for so many, this whole time. And we got to sit down with Stacy Craig, who is the niece of the two men who've been running it for decades.
Yes.
Her mother is the sister of these two men who
Yeah.
have been running it for decades. One of them passed away not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
So she still has one uncle with his hands kind of in the business, but she's kind of next generation of running the show.
Yeah.
And so we got to sit down with Stacy and then a very long time employee, Sonia Twitty.
She was precious.
So precious, full of good stories.
I was so glad she was around. I didn't know that she'd get to join us, so I was glad she did.
know. And we even met a few other people who had been employees for 30 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's just so awesome to see.
I asked one, Brenda, if this was her section that we were passing by. She said, "Oh, no, I'm over on the other side when they decided to make a non-smoking section," which what year would that have been in? Years ago. I just decided to stay. So that's been her section ever since. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we got to sample some delicious food, hear stories, and without further ado, let's just cut to some of those stories.
Taking a step back, the one of the partners till 1968, his name was Gus Saris, and he was the chef, and he came up with the original recipes for a Greek style snapper, Greek steak.
A lot of the recipes we still use
came from him.
Okay.
Wow.
But my grandfather and great uncle were mostly running the front of the house.
Okay.
And then Jimmy and Nikki, my uncles, never really were chefs. So Nikki goes back there and can do anything, but he doesn't specialize in cooking.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
But he can run a dishwasher.
Specializes in people.
He specializes in people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
And
they found recipes that worked and
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that
yeah.
people liked, and they stuck with that. They stuck with what they knew worked and what people wanted.
that's right.
Which is good, what we call Southern comfort food.
Yeah,
That's right. Now, you mentioned this to us, but I wanted our listeners to hear. This is almost like two different restaurants in lunch versus dinner. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's lunch is classic meat and three, and evolves from that's what people ate
Yes.
traditionally
Yes.
back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, and
Yeah.
so it's a variation. We've kept the same.
Still my favorite.
Yeah, vegetables.
Yeah.
And selected meats.
Yeah. A lot of snapper, you said.
A lot of snapper.
Yeah.
Our calling card is our fresh snapper.
Okay.
We're one of the few restaurants in Birmingham that brings in fresh snapper.
Wow.
And given our size, we bring it in twice a week and hand cut it on premises.
Wow.
So we have fresher fish, fresher snapper than most restaurants in the Gulf of Mexico. Would you say, Sonia?
Yes.
That's amazing.
They bring it up from the Gulf, depending on volume, 2 to 3 times a week. And it comes in, you get these whole big, beautiful red snappers.
Wow.
And we have what we call our fish processing room. And Carl
Wow.
has been processing our fish for 40 years.
Wow.
And he can take that fish and he cuts it up, and it's never frozen, so it's
Yeah.
always fresh.
You
And
can tell. It makes a difference.
It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Wow.
Talk to me about snapper throats. That's not something I'm familiar with.
That's
but
about-
even just
that's
before we
snapper
even
throats,
sat
yeah.
down
That's what
with
we're having?
you.
Yeah, that's what you're having.
Love it. Okay,
Yeah, I
okay.
knew that would be a signature dish.
Okay.
Yes.
the snapper throats is a very interesting dish because not a lot of places you can go has snapper throats or have ever heard of snapper
Right.
throats. As Stacy was saying, her grandparents, they worked here during the Depression,
Okay. Yeah.
and a lot of times they said they would work 24 hours a day.
They were
Just
open
try-
at one time, like in the 20s, 24
hours.
hours.
Just to bring in enough. So they was from the era that you used every part of everything. You didn't
You're
waste
right.
anything. So when they got the fresh fish in, Gus Saris figured out that meat was still white meat. It was juicy. It was delicious.
Wow.
So he learned to cut the snapper throat, which is not an actual throat, it's just near the
Sure.
throat area.
Yes.
But it's all white meat, it's juicy, and a lot of people say it's the very best part of the fish.
Okay.
And he developed how to take that, and you can broil them Greek style, which
delicious
is
Greek
delicious,
style.
or fry them up, and they just became a staple at the Bright Star. And
Definitely
it's one more
a
thing,
signature dish.
yes, that shows their commitment to use everything and not to waste.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
True.
That's interesting.
We also use fish, and then we have the fish. I'm gonna call them fish. The remaining fish of the
they
trimmings,
once they fillet the fish, they get the snapper throats out.
and then they use it for gumbo too. They use the
Sure.
fish for
Because
gumbo,
there's
seafood
always
gumbo.
parts of the fish you cannot fillet.
Yeah.
And certain parts that you can't use, and they will. That's what they use. They steam it and put it into our gumbo. So nothing on that fish
nothing
goes
goes to waste. Yeah.
So would be gumbo would be in the dinner menu, or
You can get
lunch
it
menu?
lunch or dinner.
Okay. All right.
You can get it by the cup, by the bowl, half gallon, gallon.
Oh.
And what makes something Greek style? Like, what's the
Greek style is, if you're familiar with the Mediterranean type diet, olive oil, primarily cooking things in olive oil, salt, pepper, lemon, garlic,
Okay.
oregano,
Okay.
and for instance, that's what's the Greek style
Yeah.
snapper. That's how it's
Okay.
prepared.
So good.
And the tenderloin
healthy.
is the same way. It's marinated. Has a little Worcestershire sauce in it, I think. The marinade
bet
does,
that's fabulous,
but it's
too.
good.
Yeah.
But it's great. It's olive oil based.
Okay. Very healthy.
Yeah, very healthy. So that's anything. I always say it's olive oil, salt, pepper, lemon
Yeah.
juice,
Yeah.
oregano, a garlic, a lot of
Okay.
garlic.
Okay. Good for you too.
Good for you too.
And then dinner is more
Steak.
Steak and seafood.
seafood.
house,
Yeah. Upscale.
And that's just
dining.
evolved.
Yeah.
I don't. I think that was that way. You can look at some old menus from the '50s and see they always emphasized fish and and
And fresh hand cut steaks, which
Yeah, yeah.
we still cut our own steaks.
that's right. Because
In fact, the Alabama Cattlemen's Association says it's the best steak in Alabama. So that says
Now we're
something.
talking.
now you're talking.
Yeah, that's a good stamp.
The Greek tenderloin is our most popular steak,
Okay.
and the way that it's cut, it's a ribeye, it's a split top, and the way they cook it and marinate it, you literally can cut it with a fork.
Yeah, it melts in your
It
mouth.
It melts
It's
in your
really,
mouth. You don't
really
even
good.
need a
You
knife.
guys are just washing forks back there. That's amazing.
I've almost been stabbed a couple times
Times
reaching
with
for a
your
plate,
fork.
and there's a little piece
It's
of
a-
steak left on it.
Oh yeah,
so
and the
funny.
marinade's good. A lot of people love to use the bread and marinade
yeah.
and all that. So
Yum.
yeah, it's
You know, you're in the South, you got to sop up.
I
all
just
that
saw all that
right,
stuff.
that's right.
We don't let anything stay on the plate.
Yeah.
And a James Beard American Classic Award. That's
2010.
something too.
That's a big deal.
That was a very big deal. My mom and Jimmy, Nikki, and I went.
You
to
got to go to
Really?
New
We got
York
to-
City.
that's New York City.
Take that home.
First and
Wow.
only time I've been on a red carpet. But it was pretty cool.
That
Wow.
sounds so cool.
Was it
Yeah,
a
it was
surprise? Like, how do they lead up to?
Oh, they just called. They called and said, "This is so and so." I can't remember who it was. I think it's Susan, somebody from the James Beard Foundation, and I think I took the call and I said, "Oh, I didn't really know the significance of it."
Yeah.
And we're here to tell you, you've been nominated. You've won this. Well, you won this award as American Classic. And then we did our research and realized it was
my
something to get
goodness.
excited about.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so fun.
If you remember, your family was sitting in BB1 and 2, and I answered the phone to start with, and I was like, So I came back there and told
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
and you said, well, I'll talk to them, and that's when she found out,
Better memory than me. Yeah,
yeah.
that's good.
And then your mom was like, oh my goodness. Is that for real?
Is that for real? Yeah, because you're always like nowadays.
skeptic.
you're
Are they wanting
skeptical.
a donation?
Yeah, exactly. Are they wanting us to buy something? A donation?
I'll never forget the look on Jimmy and Nikki's face, and Miss Helen's also when
Yeah.
they found out that they had won and they were going to New York. Jimmy was, I remember he called us all into a meeting and was just like, if it was not for the wonderful staff
Wow.
that we could never have made this honor. And he was just extremely emotional and thankful and grateful, and he was just very that was one of the greatest things in his life.
Absolutely.
Well,
recognition
that right there tells me why the doors are still open.
Because he started working full time here in 1960, and he worked until he passed away.
Wow.
So it was like almost like a lifetime achievement award.
For
For both he and Nikki too. I think coming from humble roots, because my grandparents had nothing.
Yeah.
And they went through the Depression. Your parents, it's not just unique to them, but the Depression was really a defining. And coming from Greece, where there was just no opportunity. They could be farmers and raise goats, and I have a lot of respect for that generation, particularly the women of that generation, because both my father's side of the family is Greek too. But my grandmother left home when she was 12 and didn't see her mother for 30 years.
Wow.
She left with her father, so then she worked as an au pair. And I just think about that. Gosh, what she did that so I could have this life.
Yeah.
And she really suffered for that. I mean, she had some, she missed her mom, and I know when she got older, she had some issues, some emotional issues, and a lot of those women did. So it really touches my heart a lot.
Yes.
Big sacrifice.
So, big sacrifice, but they're dire. I mean, and this was back when the communists after World War II, actually before World War II, but they just didn't have anything.
Right. Was there even a choice?
There wasn't even a choice.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's a lot of so much respect, and I appreciate anybody, like any immigrant, because I know I'm close enough to it to totally respect.
Yep.
Meeting that American dream, it does take hard work and commitment, and it's just not easy, but I love hearing immigration stories. And the truth is, most of us came from immigrant families.
Exactly, yeah.
That are here. It was really cool to get to hear about that one particular family and how...
Thank you, Bright Star, for having us.
Yes, for how they've kept that going through the generations. So we hope you all enjoyed hearing at our table about the Bright Star. And I just invite you, if you find yourself driving through Bessemer or on your way from Birmingham to Tuscaloosa, make a stop at the table of the Bright Star. It will be a really fun experience, culinary-wise and just history-wise.
That's so true.
At this American classic restaurant.
So good, so good. And if you are in our Patreon community, if you're a patron with us and a supporter of this podcast, we are going to be giving you access to that full interview through this month's exclusive content. And I'm telling you, they shared stories that were hilarious. There were pranks that Uncle Jimmy pulled, and just stories that were really fun to pull out of the little vault of their memories. And I will say this, if you are a lover of Greek food, so we've been discussing restaurants even that are American or traditional in style that are influenced by Greek ownership. But I'm talking about just Greek food in general, that Mediterranean diet. There are restaurants that also have come out of Birmingham that are chains that may be in a neighborhood near you. So I'm talking about Zoe's Kitchen and Taziki's Mediterranean Cafe. Those are both out of Birmingham and could very well be accessible in your neighborhood. I personally love the lemon chicken soup that Taziki's makes. It is one of the most healing soups. It's my go-to anytime I'm feeling bad or anytime I'm taking soup to someone that isn't feeling well. I love the brothiness, and just the lemon is so healing. So can't say enough about how good Greek food is for us. I hope you guys have a great week. Lainey, peace be with you.
And also with y'all.